Okay, we have the PowerPoint lecture for you on Chapter 6. This should help you with the objective quiz, and I'll talk a little bit about the essay quiz as well. Aristotle, to start at the beginning, was indeed a naturalist, very much unlike Plato, who did not incorporate much detail about nature into his philosophy. It might be kind of natural that Aristotle was a naturalist since he was the son of a doctor and had been studying to become a doctor as well, but eventually ended up at Plato's Academy and entrusted as kind of the successor of Plato and the great philosopher who followed him. Again, Aristotle, unlike Plato, put most of his ideas or emphasis on the natural world instead of pure ideas like Aristotle, like Plato. He was famously the tutor of Alexander the Great, and had a great influence on him, and who, of course, went on to become the famous historical figure. Aristotle doesn't have any dialogues only because they didn't survive. He supposedly wrote a lot of dialogues, but not all of them were destroyed. So all what we have from Aristotle are treatises that are much more specific and detailed rather than being dialogues. So here's a list of some of them that you have excerpts from in the text. So he did end up founding his own school. He also had a nickname. He was called the Peripatetic because that means a person who walks a lot, and he did, like Socrates, like to walk around and talk and teach. This school became known as the people who studied there became known as the Peripatetic philosophers. Um, so um, he did have a crisis at the end of his life that he, similar to Socrates, had the option to leave, and unlike Socrates, he did leave, famously, supposedly saying he did not want Athens to have to choose to sin twice against philosophy. So he got out of town. He was an outsider from Macedonia, so he did have problems fitting in much of his life because of the disrespect for outsiders. As you learn, the word barbarian that we have comes from the Greek word for outsider, so it's a very negative term for them. His naturalism really started, and he had great respect for biology, incorporated a lot of beginnings of psychology and anthropology in his writings. Okay, sorry. His naturalism included the idea that there was no supernatural order. So he got rid of Plato's form world and said, let's consider the forms to be inside of things. And he had a very strong respect for trying to find out what he would call the form or essence of living things, plants, animals, etc., and actually did quite a bit of work on that himself, and kind of working as a scientist, experimenting, dissecting, etc. So in that, as a result, he was we could call him the father of science. Again, he was a very prolific writer, wrote on many, many topics, but really jump-started our views of science because he was obsessed with trying to find out the nature of change, the changes in nature, the process of change, however you want to call it. So according to Aristotle, Plato's dualism was a problem because it did create another world. For him, as it says here, form exists immanently within the natural order and cannot exist independently. So as a result, Aristotle did not believe in the immortality of the soul. Plato did, but Aristotle believed that the soul was wrapped up with the body and was actually the living function of the body and would cease to function when the body ceased to function. So his notion was that everything can boil down to form and matter. And so for Aristotle, form very often had more of a literal connection to shape, order of certain things. And yet it was still extremely important, but matter was just as important. And for Plato, the material world, this physical world, was a lesser world than his perfect spiritual form world. So change is when matter takes on new forms, and this is one of the simplest ways to describe how Aristotle ended up discussing change. So as you see here, 3 bricklayers working on a cathedral might give different answers to the why question. For example, if they were asked, why are you working on this? One would say that they're laying bricks, another would say they were building an arch, and the third building a cathedral. So different stages of completion of man-made objects, as well as different stages of life for living objects were a great obsession of Aristotle's. So he was very goal-oriented. We're going to see that word, a technical word for that, come up here shortly. And that's what the essay quiz, chapter 6, is about as well, called teleology. But purpose or goal-oriented behavior was natural to human beings and also occurred in nature. So he was obsessed with trying to figure out the role of goals and purpose. He famously posited 4 causes, and they are kind of a way of viewing anything in the world. You can look at something, whether it be physical or an activity, and ask these 4 questions, really. The material cause, the formal cause, the efficient cause, and the final cause. So the material cause is just the material that something is made of. So again, that helps to, it's very clear in the physical world. And if you think of certain activities, you might think of what's required to physically to do those activities. The formal cause is the form or the essence. So if it is a physical item, its shape and structure would be the formal cause. If it's not physical, then the formal cause would be synonymous with the essence of the thing. What kind of similar to a definition. The efficient cause is the proximate mover. We might say that's the ordinary definition of cause in our world now. That is, if you tripped, was it a brick that caused you to trip, or was it your untied shoelace? So it's the ordinary version of cause. And then the final cause, again, that he is famous for is the purpose or goal for which a thing exists. So, and he was very concerned with the working of that. So this is the formal and final work together, and the material and efficient are more the scientific part, and the formal and final are more the philosophical part. According to Aristotle, things, especially in nature, have their end within themselves. He called this entelechy. So that's for example the natural objects. So an acorn has its end within itself. It is made to become an oak tree. It is intended to. So so for Aristotle, soul, or in transliterary Greek, it's psyche, from which we get the word psyche or psychology, psychic, anything that comes from that. Soul is the form of the body, so soul is what gives the body life, the structure that helps it to function. So he believed it was impossible to affect the body without affecting the soul, or vice versa. They are together and only separable as we could possibly think about them. So Aristotle believed in a hierarchy of souls, that we had three different souls as things. Souls could be three different types representing different stages of life, or if you will, powers or faculties. That's to say that the nutritive, all living things take in nourishment, the sensitive, being able to sense things and move, and the rational, which is the ability to think. So we have all three. Plants only have the first, and animals have the first two. He did think of them as a hierarchy, with us being the highest. So happiness is something we achieve or attempt to achieve in this world, and we try to fulfill our function as a human being. We need virtue to achieve happiness, and Aristotle did link those together. Aristotle believed the good is that at which all things aim. In other words, everything that is done for some type of good. And according to him, that whether it be a job or practicing some art, etc., it's all toward some good. Okay, here's the connection, which I had said that you have a hierarchy of, teleological thinking, which is this idea taken more comprehensively. The Greek word telos means end, purpose, or goal. So Aristotle was always wanting to make sure that anything being examined, we were taking into account its ultimate goal or final cause. And everything about his ethics, his virtue, his science is all teleological. So this is what the essay quiz for chapter 6 asks you about, to kind of tie together this teleological emphasis through several of his points. So you will be doing that this week. Eudaimonia, again, a Greek word that is very much associated with Aristotle. And that's an idea of often translated as happiness, but usually recognize that it more means fulfillment. That is, fulfilling your purpose as a human being, which is to live a good life in the best way human beings are meant to live it. So the good life is this process. It's an activity of becoming. Aristotle was very concerned with becoming in a way that Plato, had kind of denigrated becoming. This world of becoming was not as good or as real as the world of forms. Very much believed in moderation, as virtue is a mean between extremes. Again, another way he says it is it's hitting the mark between too much and not enough. If you are to be courageous, you have to work against being too brash and too cowardly, for example. And then moral virtues are habits. We develop them and we act according to these habits that we make. Again, to emphasize that he believed that the moral virtue is a mean, that is a midpoint between two other points, an excess and a deficiency. And you can see the list here. It's also shown in your book. You've got the virtue, you've got the excess, and you've got the deficiency. All right, that's all for now. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.